21 Secrets of Quiet Power. Why being underestimated is your greatest advantage. There's a brutal truth that most of us don't want to acknowledge. The reason why you're overlooked, underestimated, even dismissed, isn't because you lack talent or ability. The cause runs much deeper. You've been taught to play this game completely wrong. From childhood, society has poured toxic beliefs into our heads. Be nice, be transparent, show yourself off. But these habits are precisely what silently burns away your influence and destroys the defenses you thought were solid. The Stoic philosophers warned about this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius, a great Roman emperor, wrote, "The best way to protect yourself is not to become your own enemy." He understood that true strength doesn't lie in proving yourself to the world, but in the ability to control yourself and create influence without having to shout. Today, we'll explore 21 secrets about quiet power that only the wisest understand. These aren't cheap psychological tricks. This is the art of living forged over millennia, tested by the most powerful people in history. If you're ready to stop living by other people's conditions and start shaping your life with discipline, wisdom, and an unshakable presence, then follow through to the end of this content. The first secret sounds paradoxical. Let them underestimate you. Most people spend their entire lives trying to prove themselves at every opportunity. They talk too much in meetings, rush to share their achievements, and try to convince everyone in the room of their capabilities. But this is completely wrong. True power isn't loud. It doesn't lie in the frantic need for attention. It lies in the ability to sit quietly while others underestimate you and silently let them write the wrong story about you. When you stop trying to prove you're the smartest person in the room, you free yourself from the exhausting performance of constantly having to show off. At the same time, you allow others to relax around you. They stop hiding their intentions, reveal strategies, and lower their guard. That's when real opportunities open up. Seneca reminded us, the brave person is the free person. The courage here isn't confronting everyone all the time, but knowing how to restrain yourself when the ego wants to jump forward. That's the courage to accept misunderstanding, knowing it's only temporary and serves your long-term plan. Successful people in life, business, and influence are rarely those who broadcast their every move. They're the ones who collect quiet victories, position themselves carefully, and only strike when the impact will be undeniable. There's another benefit to this approach. It frees you from unnecessary battles. If you're constantly trying to prove yourself, you'll find yourself fighting every small challenge, defending every minor opinion. Carl Jung once said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." If you understand your own strengths deeply, you don't need constant confirmation about displaying them. You know what you can do. You don't need applause to affirm it. This inner security is what allows you to sit back and watch others rush to expose themselves. And they will, because most people can't bear being underestimated. Plato was right when he wrote, "Wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools speak because they have to say something." If you want to master the art of being underestimated, you must be comfortable saying nothing when there's nothing that needs to be said. Your restraint will be misunderstood as weakness, and that's exactly what you want, because when the right moment comes to speak or act, the contrast will be unforgettable. Ultimately, letting others underestimate you isn't playing small. It's playing smart. It's not hiding abilities forever, but revealing them at the right moment when their impact will be greatest. And when that moment comes, you won't need to introduce yourself. The results will do that for you. The second secret seems to contradict everything you've learned about honesty. Charm often wins over truth. Have you ever noticed that the person who gets promoted, wins hearts, or closes deals isn't always the one with the best skills or the most facts? Often, it's the person who makes everyone feel something positive when they're around them. They don't win because they told the absolute truth in every situation. They win because they became someone others want to be around. Truth can change your thinking, but emotions change behavior. And when people feel comfortable around you, They naturally open doors that you could never push open with force. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul is dyed by the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are reinforced in calmness, kindness, and goodwill, these qualities will silently permeate how you speak, how you move, and how people experience you. Charm isn't fakeness. It's not sweet compliments for the sake of compliments, or pretending to agree when you don't. True charm is simply the skill of making people feel seen, respected, and understood. Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's any reaction, both are transformed." When you interact with someone in a way that truly makes them feel valued, you create a reaction that lasts long after the conversation ends. That reaction can be more powerful than any argument or logical case you could present. But here's where the power of charm becomes truly strategic. When people believe you're good, their guard drops. They stop scanning your every word for hidden motives. They stop assuming you're trying to outsmart them. This is where the Stoic principle of self-control comes into play. Epictetus taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When you can maintain a calm tone and warm demeanor even under pressure, you demonstrate the kind of inner discipline that draws people toward you instead of away from you. Think about times you've been in a tense discussion. If one person remains calm, listens attentively, and even smiles when tension rises, it changes the entire atmosphere. The other person may still disagree with them, but they'll respect their composure. Over time, that respect becomes influence, and influence built on warmth tends to last longer than influence built on fear. People are persuaded less by pure logic and more by how you make them feel in the moment. That's why charm can often overcome truth. Not that truth doesn't matter, it does. But truth delivered without emotional intelligence can feel cold, even hostile. However, truth wrapped in empathy is received with an open heart. In practice, developing this kind of charm means shifting focus from "what do I need to say" to "how do I want them to feel." Do you want them to feel heard, respected, encouraged? Even in disagreement, you can aim for them to feel safe expressing themselves. The more people feel safe with you, the more they listen when you speak. The Stoic philosophers were clear that charm must be anchored in integrity. Without it, it becomes manipulation. But with it, charm becomes a tool for harmony, cooperation, and even leadership. Seneca wrote, "Wherever there are humans, there's an opportunity for kindness." That's the essence of true charm. Not charm as a mask, but charm as the reflection of a disciplined and intentional inner state. Here is the paradox. When you stop trying to prove you're good and simply act in ways that feel good to others, they decide for themselves that you're good. And once they've decided that, they'll trust your guidance almost instinctively. They'll follow your lead not because you force them to, but because they want to. Finally, charm wins over truth not because charm is more important, but because charm opens the door for truth to actually be heard. Without the first, the second often falls on deaf ears. When you master this balance, warmth anchored in discipline, kindness combined with clarity, you'll find that people don't just listen to you, they invite you in. They seek your opinions, and they make space for your influence in ways you could never demand. And that's a form of power that no amount of blunt honesty can match. The third secret requires psychological courage. Become intentionally mysterious. Have you ever met someone you couldn't figure out? They don't fit neatly into any box. One moment they're open and expressive, the next they're distant and unreadable. And instead of losing interest, you find yourself thinking about them more and more. That's the quiet power of mystery. It draws attention without demanding it. Jung once spoke about the process of individuation, the journey of becoming the person you were truly born to become. When you keep parts of yourself hidden, you allow that transformation to unfold gradually, showing the other person just enough to react, never the whole story. The Stoic philosophers valued moderation in all things, including how much you reveal about yourself. If you constantly share every thought, every emotion, and every plan, you are giving away the very colors of your soul before someone has earned the right to see them. Mystery isn't deception, it's discernment. It's choosing what to reveal and when based on wisdom, not impulse. In a world where oversharing has become the norm, a little unpredictability is powerfully attractive. When you're always the same, always available, always predictable, people stop paying attention. They think they've figured you out, so their curiosity fades. But when you vary your rhythm, sometimes engaging deeply, other times maintaining distance, you spark questions. Why did they say that? What are they thinking now? That mental loop keeps you in their minds long after you've left the conversation. Becoming intentionally mysterious starts with knowing yourself well enough to control your own patterns. This isn't game playing, but self-mastery. You decide when to step forward and when to step back, when to speak and when to let silence hang in the air. In doing so, you become less like an open book and more like a story they can't stop trying to read. From a psychological perspective, mystery works because the human mind craves closure. When someone doesn't give you all the answers, your brain tries to fill in the gaps. It replays conversations, searches for meaning, and assigns significance to even the smallest details. That's why sometimes silence can speak louder than words. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus advised, "Be silent for the most part, or speak only what is necessary." Silence invites interpretation, interpretation drives curiosity, and curiosity keeps you relevant in someone else's mind without you having to fight for attention. Think about the most compelling leaders, artists, or thinkers you admire. Rarely are they the ones constantly explaining themselves. Often, they leave space for others to wonder. They're selective in their appearances, measured in their words, and intentional with their presence. This isn't accidental, but strategic. They understand that mystery creates gravitational pull, and gravitational pull draws people in. Becoming mysterious doesn't mean you should be inconsistent in your values or unreliable in your commitments. Stoicism teaches the importance of integrity. Your moral compass should remain steady. What changes is your expression. Sometimes you give the world a glimpse of your boldness. Other times you let them sit with your stillness. It's the rhythm between these two that keeps people paying attention. Seneca once wrote, "It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness." Part of that road is learning to restrain yourself, to resist the urge to make yourself completely knowable to everyone you meet. The truth is, when people feel they've completely figured you out, they stop investing energy in the relationship. But when they're never quite certain which aspect of you they'll encounter, they remain engaged, curious, and often more respectful of your space. The beauty of purposeful mystery is that it puts you in control of your own narrative. You decide which chapters get read and which remain temporarily closed. You decide which parts of your life and mind are shared freely and what remains yours alone. This control doesn't just enhance your influence, but also protects your peace, because not everyone needs to know everything about you, and not everyone deserves that privilege. When you live with this kind of intentional rhythm, you create a presence that people can't ignore. They may not understand you completely, and that's exactly the point. The less they know for certain, the more they keep coming back hoping for another piece of the puzzle. And in that quiet pull, you hold far more power than constant exposure could ever provide. The fourth secret may challenge everything you think about transparency. Show results, hide the process. There is a reason why some of the most impactful people in history seem to emerge from nowhere with their achievements. They didn't broadcast their struggles, experiments, or failures in real time. They worked in silence, away from the noise, and only revealed their work when it was undeniable. In a world obsessed with showing every step, there's something incredibly powerful about moving quietly and letting results speak for themselves. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't waste time arguing about what a good person should be one." The same principle applies here. Stop talking about what you're rebuilding and start becoming someone who simply delivers. When you reveal the process too early, you invite opinions, doubts, and even sabotage. People start forming expectations before you're ready. Some may even try to get ahead of you, copy you, or quietly undermine you. Jung observed, the privilege of a lifetime is being who you truly are. Becoming who you are is a deeply personal journey, and it doesn't always belong in the public eye. Protecting your process isn't secrecy out of fear. It's clarity about what deserves to develop without interference. The Stoic philosophers often spoke about control, and Epictetus taught, first tell yourself what you want to become, then do what you have to do. Notice he didn't say, first tell the world. By keeping your methods close to your chest, you give yourself the freedom to make mistakes, test ideas, and change direction without the pressure of constant observation. The fewer eyes on your work while it's still forming, the more room you have to refine it into something truly remarkable. Think of it like planting a seed. You don't dig it up every day to show everyone how it's growing. You let the roots form in darkness, you water it, you nurture it, and only when it breaks through the surface does the world get to see the life you've been cultivating. If you keep lifting it out of the soil for approval, you kill its chance to grow strong. Sharing the process too early doesn't just open you up to external judgment, but also tempts you to seek validation instead of clarity. You might find yourself performing progress instead of making it, creating the appearance of movement without actually moving forward. Hiding the process forces you to be honest with yourself because you're not playing for audience applause. You're reworking for the integrity of the outcome. There's also a psychological advantage to revealing results without warning. When people can't track your every step, they stop preparing against you. They can't anticipate your moves because they don't know what you're doing. This unpredictability can be a form of quiet power. As Seneca said, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. In this context, the delay isn't about anger, but about the satisfaction of waiting for the right moment to reveal what you've accomplished. Hiding the process also gives you ownership of your story. When you only present the finished product, you control the narrative being told. You can frame it from a position of strength instead of letting others interpret your stumbles along the way. It's not about pretending you never faced obstacles, but about choosing when and how to share them so the focus remains on the strength you built, not the setbacks you endured. The truth is, in a culture addicted to constant updates, silence can feel like a disruption. People will wonder why you're so quiet. Some may underestimate you, others may assume you've stopped moving altogether, and that's perfectly fine. Let them think that, because while they're busy speculating, you're busy building. The final revelation will not only surprise them, but reset how they perceive you. Ultimately, showing results and hiding the process is about discipline. It's about trusting that you don't need to prove your progress at every step. You only need to prove it once, and that's when it's complete. Until then, protect your work like a craftsman protects their tools, not out of fear of theft, but out of respect for the craft. The fifth secret will challenge everything you think about perfection. Perfection isn't memorable, flaws are. Have you ever met someone who seemed perfect? Perfectly dressed, perfectly spoken, never making mistakes. Impressive at first, certainly, but after a while, that perfection starts to feel distant, untouchable, and over time, forgettable. Perfection doesn't give people something to connect with. What they remember, what sticks with them, are the moments you let the mask slip just enough for them to see the human behind the image. That unguarded laugh, that honest admission, that vulnerable moment, these are the threads people hold on to. Stoicism teaches that striving for virtue is a journey, not a perfect performance. When you present yourself as completely flawless, you rob others of the opportunity to see your growth, your humanity, and your ability to rise after failure. And in a strange way, you make it harder for people to trust you because perfection often feels like a wall, not a bridge. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Accepting yourself means embracing the truth that you're both strong and flawed, both capable and imperfect. Showing people only your polished side might earn admiration, but showing them you're still human, that you've had to work, stumble, and get back up, will earn loyalty and respect. That's because people don't relate to perfection, they relate to resilience. Think about your favorite characters in books or movies. Are they perfect? Probably not. They're memorable because they have layers. They have weaknesses, doubts, and moments where they falter. Those moments make their victories meaningful. The same is true in real life. If all people see from you is perfection, they have nothing to chase, nothing to wonder about. But if you give them 90% of your story and keep that last 10% in shadow, you create a sense of ongoing intrigue. Knowing yourself includes knowing where you fall short and owning it. This isn't confessing every mistake or exposing every flaw. It's showing just enough humanity to make people feel they can approach you, understand you, and even learn from you. When you reveal a controlled flaw, a moment where your emotion shows, a glimpse of struggle, it makes you real. And real lasts in memory longer than perfect ever will. The Stoic philosophers also understood the danger of vanity. Seneca wrote, "It is not the person who has too little, but the person who craves more, that is poor." Similarly, it's not the person who has flaws, but the person who craves constant perfection, never letting others see the truth beneath the surface, who loses influence. People admire skill, but they connect with honesty. Perfection can be admired from a distance, but flaws create intimacy. When you share a glimpse of your humanity, it gives people permission to embrace their own. That shared recognition becomes a bond, and bonds rooted in authenticity often carry more influence than the most polished image you could present. Finally, perfection may shine brilliantly for a moment, but it's the subtle human details, the cracks in the mask, that stay with people for years. Leave room for curiosity. Leave space for them to wonder about the parts of you they've never seen. Because when they sense there's more beneath the surface, they'll keep thinking about you long after the conversation ends. The sixth secret demands a discipline that most people cannot master, saying less than you want to. Most people cannot handle silence. It makes them uncomfortable. They rush to fill it with words, often not realizing how much they are revealing. That's why those who can master silence hold an invisible advantage. They don't waste energy trying to win every exchange with words. They speak with purpose, then let the pause do the rest of the work. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the person who speaks less often becomes the one everyone listens to. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This is not just a moral guideline, but a strategy. The fewer words you speak, the more weight each word carries. When you are selective with your words, people learn to pay attention because they know you won't speak unless it matters. Jung offered a different perspective. In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order. Silence is part of that secret order. When emotions run high, especially in conflict, most people become reactive. They speak to defend themselves, to fill the tension, to prove their point. But when you remain calm and only say what is necessary, you control the rhythm of the interaction. Your composure becomes unsettling to others because it forces them to sit with their own thoughts. The Stoic philosophers practiced restraint as a form of discipline. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." The more you listen, the more you understand, and the more you understand, the more power you have, not power over others in a manipulative way, but power over yourself and how you choose to engage. Silence is not passive, it is active observation. You are studying body language, tone of voice, word choices. You are noticing small cracks in someone's confidence or logic that you would miss if you were too busy talking. Think about negotiation. The best negotiators know that silence is often the strongest move. They make their point, then let it hang. That pause creates pressure. The other person starts talking to relieve that pressure, and when they do, they often reveal more than they intended. This works beyond formal negotiations. At work, in personal relationships, even in casual conversations, the less you say, the more the other person feels compelled to fill the space. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. People may misinterpret your silence as weakness, but over time they will learn that it is calculated. And that recognition will change how they approach you. Silence also gives you control over your own emotional state. When you pause before responding, you give yourself time to think, to choose your words carefully, to ensure you're not speaking from impulse. This is one of the purest forms of Stoic practice, choosing action based on reason, not emotion. And when you do speak, after a pause, your words carry the weight of thought and intention. The beauty of saying less than you want is that it makes your rare words unforgettable. People will remember the moment you broke your silence because it will feel intentional. It's the contrast between stillness and movement that creates impact. Like in music, the pauses are as important as the notes. They give meaning and shape to the sound. Ultimately, saying less than you want isn't about withholding forever. It's about creating space for truth to emerge. It's about listening deeply, choosing your moments, and letting your presence speak as loudly as your voice. When you master that balance, you don't just participate in conversations, you direct them, even when you're silent. The seventh secret requires a kind of subtle intelligence that few dare to attempt, blurring the lines between you and your opponent. People quickly categorize. It's our instinct to label people as friend or foe, ally or opponent. This instinct stems from survival. Knowing who is safe and who is a threat is essential. But in the modern world, those labels can be used against you. If someone marks you too quickly as a competitor, they will stay on guard. They will watch you, anticipate you, and even work to limit your moves. On the other hand, if you are immediately seen as an ally, they will let you in but may never take you seriously as a potential partner. That is why one of the most powerful positions you can occupy is the space in between, where they are not entirely sure what you are to them. You're close enough to share ideas and resources, but distant enough to remain unpredictable. That uncertainty keeps them off balance and gives you an advantage that few think to cultivate. Epictetus taught, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." You cannot control how people will ultimately choose to label you, but you can influence the clues they are given. You can control how much they see of your true intentions. You can present parts of yourself that make them comfortable while keeping the parts that give you advantage hidden until the moment they matter most. This is about positioning, not deception. You are not pretending to be something you're not. You are simply not giving the full story until it's time. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that life is unpredictable and rigidity is the enemy of survival. If you lock into your role, people will know exactly how to use or work against you. If you remain flexible, they will never quite know what to expect. Courage in this context is the willingness to move between these roles without fear of judgment. Most people cling to labels because labels feel safe. If they are the loyal friend, they risk no accusation of betrayal. If they are the fierce competitor, they risk no being underestimated. But both labels are prisons. They lock you into predictable behavior. When you blur the lines, you give yourself the freedom to respond to each situation as it is, not as people expect. And in that freedom, you find space to operate strategically without unnecessary resistance. Let's put this into a practical example. Imagine you're in a corporate environment and there's someone in your department who is clearly ambitious. They are watching you, measuring your progress against theirs. If you position yourself as their open competitor, they will compete aggressively. They will cut off information, form alliances against you, and block your moves. But if you position yourself as a helpful colleague, praising their work, supporting their ideas, they will relax. They will open doors, maybe even share information freely. All while you observe, learn their strategy, and prepare your own moves. When the right opportunity appears, you can act decisively, and they will never see it coming. If you consistently cultivate this balance, warm enough to invite trust, but cautious enough to protect your advantage, you build a reputation for being approachable, but hard to pin down. People will be drawn to you because you don't trigger alarm bells, but they will also respect you because they can't fully read you. And when they can't read you, they can't predict you. This approach also works on a psychological level because it plays into human discomfort with uncertainty. People want to know where you stand. If they can't figure it out, they keep paying attention. They keep trying to gather information about you, and in doing so, they remain mentally, emotionally, and strategically engaged with you while you quietly move according to your own plan. However, the Stoic philosophers would warn that this strategy must never devolve into deception for deception's sake. The goal is not to manipulate people toward their destruction, but to position yourself so you can act freely without unnecessary obstacles. If your long-term goals align with virtue, as Stoicism affirms, then blurring roles is simply a way to remove friction from the path ahead. It's about eliminating early conflict, not about betraying trust that has been genuinely earned. The practical applications can be subtle. Genuinely praise someone's work even when you intend to surpass it. Offer help when it costs little but earns goodwill. Be willing to sit quietly in meetings, letting others think you agree with their direction while you quietly prepare an alternative plan. Sometimes you may even agree with an opponent publicly, not because you've abandoned your position, but because you know it's not yet the right time to reveal your stance. Timing is as important as perception here. Seneca said simply, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." Blurring the lines is a form of preparation. You are ensuring that opportunities are not closed to you before they appear. You are staying in the game, close enough to see the board, but not so obvious that you become the next target. And when that opportunity comes, you are ready to act, not because you fought to overcome barriers, but because you walked through a door that no one thought to lock. Ultimately, blurring the lines between you and your opponent is choosing the largest space to maneuver. It's the middle ground where you can observe, adapt, and decide on your own terms. It's not playing both sides, but refusing to be locked into a single role that limits your freedom. It's a skill that requires restraint, self-awareness, and patience, but it delivers results in ways that open confrontation rarely can. And the final sign you've mastered it is they will speak well of you in one room while wondering about you in another. And all the while, you'll be exactly where you want to be, moving freely while they're still trying to figure you out. The eighth secret requires a kind of patience that few can execute. Make them comfortable before you act. In any competitive environment, whether business, politics, social, or even family, people defend themselves most fiercely when they sense a threat. If they think you're targeting their position, influence, or advantage, they will watch you like a hawk. They will close doors before you can walk through them. They will prepare defenses before you even make a move. But human nature also works in reverse. When people believe you are not a danger to them, their vigilance fades. Shoulders drop, pace slows, and it's in that moment of relaxation, when the walls come down, that opportunities open wide. The wisest strategy is not always to push hard for what you want. Often, it's to first make them feel completely comfortable, as if you are an ally in their success, not an opponent standing in their way. If your opponent plays the game by direct confrontation, meeting force with force, you gain advantage by becoming the opposite, calm, pleasant, and even encouraging. There's something disarming about genuinely supporting someone's moves, nodding along with their ideas, and making them believe you're aligned with them. This not only lowers their guard, but changes the energy of the interaction. They see you as part of their momentum, not an obstacle to it. And when someone feels you're on their side, they stop defending against you entirely. Jung observed, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. This applies here in a very practical way. If you know your own ambition, your hunger to advance, to win, to claim space, You can control it instead of letting it leak into your words and actions. That self-awareness is the difference between someone who reveals intentions too early and someone who can keep their true goals quiet until the right moment. Jung's insight also reminds us that protective instincts run deep in everyone. If you want to move without encountering resistance, you must soothe that instinct in others before you act. The courage here is in patiently waiting for the right moment instead of forcing outcomes early. Many people mistake speed for strength, rushing into action as soon as they see what they want. But true strength is in restraint, knowing that the opportunity will still be there. Only now it will be easier to grasp because no one is guarding it. The freedom in this approach comes from moving when you choose, not when circumstances force you. In practice, this might mean actively participating in someone's success, even when you intend to surpass them eventually. You help them prepare for the big presentation, knowing that the more they trust you, the more they will draw you into projects. You praise their leadership abilities publicly, knowing that it solidifies you in their mind as a loyal supporter. Over time, your position becomes so integrated with theirs that when they drop a responsibility or overlook an opportunity, you are the natural choice to step in. In this strategy, you're not just thinking about your next move, but about the entire relationship as a long-term structure. You're building something larger than a single victory. By making them comfortable, you create a framework of cooperation around the relationship, a framework that allows you to operate without triggering humanity's natural reflex to resist and compete. This doesn't mean you pretend to be something you're not. It means you manage what you reveal and when you reveal it. You don't have to lie about your goals. You simply don't broadcast them before the appropriate time. You keep conversations focused on their priorities, their success, their needs. This builds goodwill and reduces suspicion. And when suspicion disappears, access opens up. With access, you can see the entire board and decide where to move without having to push through unnecessary resistance. Jung's ideas about the shadow also come into play here. People often project their own fears onto those they see as opponents. If you make them feel you're aligned, those projections don't stick. Instead, they project trust, even goodwill, onto you. And trust is a much better currency than fear. When you're working toward a long-term position, you might see someone else advance faster than you, grab a position you'd been eyeing, or win attention you feel you deserve. The temptation is to voice your opinion, to make your ambitions clear. But if you think about it differently, see their rise as part of the cover you're building, you can use their momentum to your advantage. Their success becomes the very thing that distracts them from seeing yours. And here's where the real payoff comes. When you finally make your move, it doesn't feel like an attack to them. It doesn't even feel like a surprise. They may not understand how it happened, but they won't feel betrayed because the entire time you positioned yourself not as someone climbing over them, but as someone simply stepping into space that naturally fits you. By the time they realize the shift, it's complete. The ninth secret may be the most paradoxical. Create dependency, then step back. In every personal, professional, or strategic relationship, there is a scale of influence. At one end, both parties can walk away tomorrow and lose little. At the other end, removing one person would make the entire structure wobble, even collapse. The most enduring form of influence lives at the far end of that scale. It is not built on titles, fear, or loud displays of dominance. It is built quietly, almost invisibly, by becoming essential in ways no one else thinks to. You do things for them, big and small, that no one else even thinks to do, and certainly no one does as well. And over time, without realizing it, they begin to rely on you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What is not good for the swarm cannot be good for the bee." It's a reminder that all relationships, even power dynamics, are systems. When you provide real value to that system, whether it's your insight, your stability, your problem-solving skills, or your ability to make the right move at the right time, you become a piece woven into its structure, You're not just helpful, you're part of its operation. And when you're part of the operation, your absence is not neutral, it's disruptive. Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." That truth shows up here in a different way. When people can rely on you, they don't have to face certain weaknesses or gaps in themselves. You fill them without fanfare. Maybe you provide clarity where they have confusion. Maybe you bring calm where they have chaos. Maybe you consistently deliver results in the one area they never seem to master. Whatever it is, you take a burden off their shoulders. And humans, being human, quickly become comfortable with that comfort. Comfort becomes reliance. Reliance becomes dependency. Jung's theory of the shadow is relevant here too. People don't like to admit how much they depend on others. It feels like weakness. So they will often convince themselves they could live without you until they actually have to. By stepping back, you force that hidden truth into the light. They have to face the reality that without you, their world runs less smoothly, their decisions are less sharp, or their stress levels rise higher. And once they feel that truth, they cannot unfeel it. You don't build dependency by forcing your help on people or making them feel small without you. You do it by quietly showing up in the most important moments, often without seeking recognition. You make yourself necessary not by demanding, but by consistently being the person who can be trusted to deliver when it matters. Think about a great mentor or leader you've known. Initially, you may not have realized how much you relied on their insight. But the first time you had to navigate something without them, you probably immediately felt the difference. That's the power of creating dependency. The absence is not just noticed but felt, and that feeling reshapes the other person's perception of you. In practice, this might look like consistently solving a problem they fear, providing a perspective they can't find anywhere else, or connecting them with opportunities they wouldn't have access to without you. Over time, they stop looking elsewhere for those things. They come to you automatically. And when you step back, even briefly, they feel the gap. They may not acknowledge it publicly, but internally, the thought is there, I need them. Dependency is built through routine. When your contribution becomes an immovable part of their routine, they are not just choosing you, they are structured around you. Remove a key piece of structure and the whole thing changes. Sometimes it even becomes unstable. Stepping back doesn't need to be dramatic. It can be as simple as not volunteering for a task you usually take on, or letting a meeting proceed without your input, or delaying your usual check-in. The goal is not to abandon, but to create a moment of contrast. You are allowing them to see in real time what life without your participation feels like. It's a powerful teacher. And here's the long-term benefit. When you return, your value is not just understood but reinforced. They don't just think you're helpful. They know they function better when you're there. That knowledge shapes future decisions. They're more likely to include you, consult you, and keep you close because they've felt what it's like when you're not around. The Stoic philosophers believed in the power of measured action. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." In influence, few wants means needing to exert less visible effort to maintain your position. When you've built real dependency, you no longer have to push to be included. Your absence ensures they will pull you in. That's the quiet advantage of this rule. Ultimately, creating dependency and stepping back is not about trapping someone. It's about making your contribution undeniable. It is about building your role so deeply into their world that removing you would mean restructuring the entire thing. And when people realize that, they will hold on to you not out of obligation, but out of instinct to preserve what makes their life easier, smoother, and more successful. In nature and in power, what endures is not what is largest or loudest. It is what becomes indispensable. When you can make yourself indispensable, you have moved from having influence to becoming the influence itself. And in that shift lies a form of power that very few ever achieve. The final secret may be the most powerful of all: becoming a system, not just a person. Some people make themselves valuable by what they can do in a moment. They have skills, they're reliable, they can handle a crisis. But the moment they leave, their influence disappears with them. Then there are those who operate at an entirely different level. They don't just do the work, they design how the work gets done. They don't just give advice, they shape the very way people think. Over time, their methods, models, and standards become so deeply embedded in the environment that removing them would mean breaking the very structure. That's when you stop being useful or talented and become something far more powerful. You become the system. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What we do now echoes in eternity. Systems are echoes. They continue to operate long after the person who built them is gone." If your goal is lasting influence, the kind that remains even when you're not in the room, you can't rely on personality alone. Charm fades when you're absent. Personal charisma cannot be replicated. But a process, a standard, or a framework that is something others cannot help but follow because it is built into how everything operates. Becoming a system isn't about self-branding or making grand promises. It's about acting consistently and repeatedly until it becomes the norm. When you operate with such discipline that your way of working becomes the way of working, people unconsciously adopt your methods. They may not even realize they're following structures you've built, but they are. And that's what makes your influence harder to remove. The Stoic philosophers understood this deeply. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." If you want to turn yourself into a system, you can't just tell people how things should be done, you have to model it until it becomes instinct for those around you. When you do this well, your influence no longer depends on constant reminders or direct participation. It lives in the habits, in the expectations, in the very language and rhythm of the environment. Think about the great leaders, teachers, or strategists you've known. Those who left a permanent mark weren't just memorable personalities, they left methods, rituals, and ways of thinking that continue to shape decisions long after they're gone. In a company, it might be a problem-solving approach that everyone now follows. In a family, it might be a set of principles about how to handle conflict or make decisions. In a team, it might be a communication style or planning approach that becomes second nature. If you want to become a system, your excellence must be repeatable, teachable, and adaptable. It can't be locked inside your personal skill set. It has to be something others can execute without you. That's the difference between an expert and a system builder. An expert is valuable when present. A system builder is valuable forever. From a strategic standpoint, becoming a system also gives you leverage. When your way of working is embedded so deeply that removing you would break everything, you gain a kind of security that few others have. People can replace an individual, but they'll hesitate to dismantle the framework that holds things together. In this way, you become difficult not just to replace, but even to imagine operating without. Jung's insights about the collective unconscious apply here. Systems tap into patterns larger than the individual. They create a shared mental model that others use to navigate reality. Once that model is established, it stops being yours by name but remains yours in function. People stop thinking of it as your way and start thinking of it as the way. That's when you've succeeded in embedding yourself so completely that you become invisible but indispensable. This approach works across every field. In business, a founder becomes a system by building company culture that operates smoothly without them. In politics, a leader becomes a system by leaving institutions, policies, or alliances that remain intact for decades. In personal life, a parent becomes a system by leaving values and traditions that shape their family's choices across generations. And here's the real power. Once you've become a system, you no longer have to push to maintain influence. The structure you've built carries you forward. Others will protect it, defend it, and maintain it because it has become their normal. In many cases, they'll fight to keep it in place even more fiercely than you would, because it directly benefits them. Building yourself into a system can be slow, difficult work. It requires repetition, patience, and willingness to think long-term. But once it's established, the rewards are lasting. Your influence stops being a fleeting presence and becomes an enduring framework. And that framework is harder to remove than any individual. Ultimately, becoming a system is shifting from personal importance to structural importance. When you achieve that, you no longer require people to appreciate you. You've made yourself part of the foundation of what they already appreciate. And when someone is part of the foundation, removing them isn't just inconvenient, it risks collapsing the whole thing. That's a position of quiet, lasting power. True power isn't what you do when the world is watching. It's the quiet discipline, the choices no one sees, and the lasting mark you leave on others. The Stoic philosophers knew this real strength is built in silence, and it endures long after the moment has passed. The secrets we've explored today aren't about manipulation or deception. They're about understanding the deepest nature of human influence. When you let others underestimate you, you create surprise. When you prioritize charm over truth, you open the door for truth to be heard. When you become intentionally mysterious, you make people curious about you long after you've left. When you hide the process and only show results, you control the narrative. When you embrace your flaws, you become relatable. When you say less, each word carries more weight. When you blur the lines between you and your opponent, you gain freedom to act. When you make others comfortable before acting, you remove resistance. When you create dependency then step back, you prove your value. And when you become a system instead of just a person, you build influence that outlasts your very life. These aren't tricks. This is the art of living with purpose, discipline, and deep understanding of human nature. This is the path to a kind of power that doesn't need to shout, doesn't demand recognition, and doesn't fear change. It's quiet power, and once you understand how to operate in silence, you'll find that sometimes the quietest people truly shape the world around them. If these secrets have changed how you think about influence, power, and the relationships you build, then remember that knowledge without action is just entertainment. Real strength comes from applying these insights consistently, when no one is watching and especially when it's difficult. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his personal journal, "Be the person you seek." That was an advice for others. It was a reminder to himself about the kind of person he wanted to become when no one was observing. That's the essence of quiet power. Not what you do to impress the world, but who you become when only you know the truth. The future belongs to those who understand that real influence doesn't come from noise, but from presence. Not from demanding attention, but from deserving it, and not from forcing others to follow, but from becoming someone they naturally want to follow. When you master the art of moving in silence, you'll discover that sometimes the quietest steps create the loudest echoes.